After their exhaustive review of the evidence, the grand jury deliberated over 2 days, making their final decision. They determined that no probable cause exists to file any charge against Officer Wilson and returned a no true bill on each of the 5 indictments.
We need to accept that this decision was the grand jury's to make. There are Americans who agree with it, and there are Americans who are deeply disappointed, even angry. It's an understandable reaction.
I've never seen a prosecutor hold a press conference to discredit the victim.
Well, we're waiting to see what happens in Ferguson, Missouri tonight. I think we have live pictures coming in, and so far the streets seem to be clear, and the National Guard is out tonight after it was delayed last night. The mayor saying that that was a major problem there, but there you see some officers on the sidewalks preparing for what could be another night of protest and possibly violence. Let's hope not. In the meantime, ABC has an interview with Ferguson police officer Darren Wilson, in which, among other things, the officer says no way was did Brown have his hands up when he was fatally shot. There you see a still of the interview with George Stephanopoulos. We hope to bring you a soundbite from that interview in just a few minutes. In the meantime, let's bring in our panel. Steve Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard; A.B. Stoddard, associate editor of The Hill; and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Okay, Steve, hopefully we don't see what we saw last night. You heard the president earlier in this newscast urging calm. What about the developments today?
Well, I thought the president's comments were exactly right, really hit it on the mark. They were measured, they were appropriate. He condemned the violence. He said the people who are committing the violence should be prosecuted if they continue. And then he encouraged people to look to other ways to make a positive point, which, you know, harkens back to his days as a community organizer. If you want to protest, protest. If you want to channel your anger, do it in a positive and constructive way and work for change. Now, I disagree with some of the particulars of his analysis, but I thought on the whole that he sort of rose to the occasion. And in what looked to be extemporaneous remarks, it was interesting to me that they put these at the top of his immigration speech. You would have thought that they might have been scripted or building on what he said last night, and it really just felt like the president was talking to the American people, and I thought it was quite effective.
Okay, let's take a listen to Officer Wilson. I think we have a short soundbite from that interview.
At that time, I gave myself another mental check. Can I shoot this guy? Legally, can I? And the question I answered myself was, I have to. If I don't, he will kill me if he gets to me.
And that really was the conclusion, A.B., of the grand jury, that was there was some kind of struggle inside the car itself, the police officer's car, and that Brown charged the officer enough to feel like the officer was right in using what they called self-defense.
Well, it's clear what happened in the car was justifiable, and it was self-defense. I think there is some conflicting witness testimony about what happened outside the car when the blood trail showed on the ground that Brown went away from the officer and then he came back. There are conflicting reports about what happened there. I think that you're hearing a lot of criticism today, not that all the information, what they're calling a data dump, was given to the grand jury panel, but that the prosecutor did not try to make a case for an indictment, which is supposedly his job, that he was sort of neutralizing the grand jury by flooding them with information and not making a case to indict Officer Wilson. And that's the criticism that you're hearing, that it was designed to make sure that they reached a certain conclusion. And
that prosecutor, by the way, Robert McCullough, is a Democrat, has a good record in that county for moving things forward.
He was criticized from the start as the pick, that he's pro-cop. His father, I believe, was killed, if I am correct, and he was criticized from the beginning as the wrong choice for this job.
Speaking of calling for calm, you heard the president earlier in this show, but you also had earlier today, just before this show, the Attorney General, Eric Holder, making his own comments about the protests. Take a listen.
It is clear, I think, that acts of violence threaten to drown out those who have legitimate voices, legitimate demonstrators, and those acts of violence cannot and will not be condoned.
Condoned, Charles?
That's an astonishing statement, and it is really in stark contrast with the way that the president presented himself tonight. I agree entirely with Steve. As I was watching it earlier in the show, I was impressed by how the president was measured and calm, encouraging people who are upset, frustrated, at the same time unequivocally condemning the arson and the looting and saying these people ought to be prosecuted. You get the Attorney General condemning the arson and the looting by saying that it threatens to drown out the legitimate voices. That's not the reason that this is wrong. It's because it is wrong. It's because it's an assault on other people. It's an assault on the law. And then I was watching this live, and when he said the acts of violence cannot or will not be, I'm waiting for the word tolerated. He is the Attorney General of the United States. And he uses the word condone. Is there anybody who thinks that arson and looting ought to be condoned? I think that is an astonishing statement by an Attorney General. Well, and again, the contrast with the President is very stark.
In the meantime, that federal investigation continues, despite what the grand jury came up with last night.
It will go nowhere. I think he's doing it as a way to placate the people who are angry. I think it'll end up where the Trayvon Martin federal investigation went, which was to determine that there wasn't a case.
Next up, Republicans fight among themselves over Benghazi.